Last time on the Seventh Valkyrie, the Machine King reveals his true half-man, half-machine self to Gendro, but the games have just begun. The coins are stacked high, but as the night goes on, the stakes are about to get far higher. Next, in Part 3, the finale of Pellets for a Rat. And I think that for a lifetime's worth of money on the table, which could potentially be yours, you will act exactly how I want you to for a few minutes. Or did I read that wrong? Gendro stared down at the money, stammering and spluttering in his tracks as Krona loosed his eye patch, revealing a wearing, clicking eye glowing silver. He carefully laid his jacket on the bar stool next to him, revealing a metallic silver arm just as unsettlingly lifelike as the hand it connected to. Stretching his shoulders and leaning back, Krona sipped the drink again, limbs whirring smoothly as he took an interest again in the rat carcass on the table. Ugh. Thank God we can finish that little act. You have no idea how much fun it is to play the part of the strange, wealthy traveler. I have such a blast. You can push a man so far before he snaps the first time, though I've seen men last far longer than you, which is neither a good thing or a bad thing, really, just a data point to track. But I will be tracking it. Come on, finish pouring those drinks and let's have a seat while I dissect our friend. Let's start putting numbers up. Let's start talking turkey. 10 steer just to hear me out? The work of 100 nights. Sound fair? Krona picked a stack of 10 coins and slid them off to the side, in a small black pouch, along with the coins he'd already offered. He tossed that pouch to Gendro. Gendro eyed the man across from him. This was a dangerous man not to hear out if he were telling the truth. You heard stories when travelers came through. Most of them were probably made up, but when they came to the Machine King, they were all bad. Looking down, Gendro opened the pouch and eyed the coins. They were as pristine as any coin he'd seen come through the bar, and as intricately pressed as if they'd just come straight from the Edarin Mint. They were counterfeits. They would fool anyone Gendro had ever met. Draining the brandy, Gendro reached for another glass and strode to sit next to the Machine King, who smiled intently. Wielding the blunt butter knife, Krona stabbed down into the dead rat and began ripping a jagged, unclean line straight down its spine to the tail. He ignored the oozing blood flicking off onto his chest with each jagged catch of old iron on bone, and he wasn't fazed by the bursting twist of orange and black and white that accompanied each of the rat's punctured organs. Instead, he continued to speak as if nothing was happening. And now you see the power of money firsthand. Before we were only dealing with implications. I stacked the money high and I asked for no prices. But at no point did I ever say that I would pay you. Just that I would make it worth your while and that I understood the inconvenience. Funny how universal and yet so incredibly vague the language of coin that we all use. So what, you're just gonna walk away and skip the bill? Gendro asked, mustering up some courage. He was full-on piss-ass drunk now, but he sensed he might need it. Fine thing for some big-talking king of crime. Oh, of course I won't skip the bill. But for the mere implication that I would pay you, you served me and listened well into the evening when you knew that the storm raging above us would leave your family scrambling to lock down the house. What are you talking about? That storm stopped as soon as you walked in the door. Believe me, it didn't, though I do wish I was that powerful. Locking down a few windows with a little clever magnetic manipulation, now that is easier. Krona snapped, and all of a sudden the shutters surged against their casing. and the storm leapt out into fury, raging like a 10-year winter tempest. Gods above, I have to... You will do nothing. Krona snapped again, and the shutters screeched shut, silencing the storm. Besides, there's more money on the table for you, barkeeper, enough to make all of this evening seem like a bad dream. The ticking of the coin distracted you from the wind to this point. Surely you can listen a little longer and drown it out. You're crazy. I've got 10 more coins to finish hearing me out. Another 100 days of work. How does that sound? You drive a hard bargain, keep it going, and you'll be set to live like a king. Well, like some smaller, less important kings. Gendro clenched his teeth, but he held his tongue as the coins went clinking into his bag. That drew a smile and a mechanical wink. You know, I find it so interesting how far a rat will go at simply the implication of a pellet. Every rat, especially the human ones, they have a limit, but it's different for everyone. Devious, fascinating little creatures. With a growl of frustration underscoring his last phrase, he finished flaying the rat and tore pelt from carcass, splattering gore and blood across the two men. Gritting his teeth again, Gendro wiped it away and took a sip of his renewed brandy, drawing a glance of what might have been approval. Stripping the 2 pieces of rat, skin and body, Krona turned back to Gendro. I have a little experiment to run with you, barkeeper. You see, long ago I started off studying rats, then dogs and pigs, some primitive apes, but they grew boring. Animals are far too predictable. Eventually, they are no longer fun as test subjects, but 2-legged rats, like yourself, well, their will, their intellect, their emotions, at times, can be utterly perplexing and utterly fascinating. Human rats continue to surprise me no matter how many years I test them. And again, I have also found men who are even more boring than our flayed friend here on the table, and they did not last much longer. Krona flapped the skin of the rat around, doing a little dance with it, and then chuckled like he'd remembered some joke. Finally, he dropped the rat skin on the table and turned to focus on Gendro again. I have a very short series of tests. I won't take all your time, but you will have the chance to win all of this money. Plus, the stranger reached into his coat and threw 2 more medium-sized sacks full of coin onto the table. Plus, enough for you and your family and all of your friends for generations. More than people like you could possibly spend unless you get very, very creative, and you do not strike me as a very, very creative man. Ignoring the insult, at a nudge from the stranger, Gendro inspected both sacks of coin, finding them both filled to the brim with steer. It was more wealth than existed in the whole town of Cleft multiple times over. It was all the money anyone could need in a lifetime. And for a lifetime like that, well, I guess I can at least hear out your little tests. Krona smiled as Gendro downed the brandy and carefully started stowing the coins again. Then, Krona picked up the hideous, dripping and oozing sack of organs that had been the rat, holding it closely. You know, you so rarely understand a creature until you take it apart. Thousands of generations of iteration, perfection, to create this little squirming mass of bones and lungs and digestion and brains and... That metal hand viced shut, and the rat burst into sludge, dripping down through those shining metal fingers into Gendro's empty glass. Krona squeezed again, brown and red and vibrant yellow and white all extruding through metal into the whiskey glass. What you're looking at in there, if I'm seeing correctly, are some pieces of stomach, some eye fluid, the spleen, a little bit of pulverized lung, the vast majority of the lower intestine. That's gross. It's warm, isn't it? Not quite hot, but certainly warm. Gendro gagged. Drink it for 50, Cronus said, handing the glass up to Gendro. What? That's filth. Okay, 60 to drink it now. Though it does look like we've got some marrow and a little bit more of the digestive tract. Believe me, it's only going to get worse the harder I squeeze. Ain't drinking that. Shit'll kill me. Might make you sick. But there are no signs of plague on this one, so you'll survive. Fuck off. Then you end the game here, Cronus said. There's a lifetime of wealth on the table, and you just have to sit through a bad shot. You can't do this to a man. Gendro winced as the crunching of the rat carcass brought still more fluid from that shining vice grip. Suddenly, Cronus spoke. All right, 100 men, drink the fucking rat! The stranger shouted, and with a roar, Gendro lifted the glass, sliding it back. Crona's other hand came up to tip the glass all the way back as the lumpy, crunching sludge slid into Gendro's mouth. The first taste of organ and pus and adjusted food in the undercut of roast sent Gendro vomiting, but with a bloodied hand, the stranger sealed Gendro's mouth shut, trapping vomit and organs before they could escape. Swallow or it doesn't count, the man breathed, eyes on Gendro's as the barkeeper choked and gagged and shot vomit out of his nose, spraying all across the traveler who could have been 100 miles away for all he reacted. And then, choking and gasping and crying, Gendro swallowed. 6 textures of bone, blood, fat, organ, and muscle, and immediately emptied his stomach halfway across the stranger and out onto the ground. Gasping for breath and weeping and spitting beer and liquor and chunks of rat, Gendro fell down to the floor, still vomiting, accompanied only by the sound of clinking, stacking coins piled high and sliding into his pouch. The stranger was speaking, but Gendro didn't hear, still gasping and gagging and shuddering, until a gentle hand on his back sent him scattering across the floor. You're messed up. Fuck you. Take your money, take your goddamn tests and get out of here. I'll see you again, I'll kill you. Well, I highly doubt that last part, but I will take my final test and leave. Crona began to slowly return the vast coins piled high and slide them back into his own pouch, returning to that rhythmic, hypnotic ticking as the shining gold spread across the table slowly vanished from view. It's a shame. You really were so close. I only had one more. Gendro panted, still partially vomiting, spitting out bile, and refusing to even look at the stranger. But as that ticking continued, with each clink into the bags, the room grew darker. Nearly 150 steer was left in Gendro's sack, enough to comfortably retire on, that was for sure. But not enough to change the course of his life, or the life of his family. Not like what had been there before. Compared to the piles on the table, what was left was nothing. And as this last stacks of coin went into those black velvet bags and disappeared into the man's coat, the stranger revealed a single, final steer. This is gonna be a little rude, but do you happen to have change for this? For dinner and drinks? This is the smallest denomination I have on me. Take your money and leave. Dinner, drinks, they're on the house. Just please, get out of my house. So we've reached this rat's breaking point. It's a shame. You were on the last one, but I guess I can take all of this generational lifetime of wealth out with me. Get out, please. Chrono took his coat, and with his step now intentionally heavy with coin, he began to sashay back over the screaming boards towards the windows. It was a lifetime of wealth, walking right out of the door. As the stranger stepped to the first window, humming and tapping it to unseal the shutter, Gendro spoke. What is the last test? Just so I can know. Chrono wasn't facing Gendro, but Gendro could practically hear the smile on the man's face. Or maybe that was from the ticking gears hidden all over Chrono's body. Well, on my person and in those saddlebags, I currently have 5,000 steer. More than you'd earn here in about 300 years, give or take, depending on how often you have a good night. Gendro nearly choked again. Turning back, the stranger began to walk slowly, steadily across the floor, like a snake winding across screaming floorboards. That is plenty of pellets. Most rats can't even comprehend that much, but some can. Can you? Asked. What is the final test? Gendro took a step back, but Chrono didn't stop. Like a viper's fangs, Chrono's metal hand struck. One moment it was by his side, and the next it was clasped gently, yet unforgivingly, around Gendro's neck. My last test is this. Would you die for that many pellets, barkeeper? Here's how it would play out. I leave these coins here in your home with an elegant note explaining them as a reward for your life. Then, the traveler's metal hand tightened. Then, I snap your neck. Gendro's eyes went wide, and he reached up to the hand around his neck, but for all he struggled, he could not pry it apart. No. He began to kick out, panicking, and with a clear, ringing slap, the stranger backhanded him across the face. A rat that tries to bite is worth nothing to me. Chrono's hand tightened around Gendro enough to choke him, but then in a moment, Chrono's anger had subsided. He had that calm steadiness, and with it, he slapped Gendro twice more and began to speak again. Okay. Well, it's good that you see some value in your own life. Some rats, the depressed ones, the suicidal ones, some rats make this game disappointingly simple. But that value you place on yourself, is it worth the joy your death will bring to others, specifically your family? Gendro, don't cry. Look. Your family will be set for generations. You'll never have to want. They'll have whatever they desire. Do you think you can make them that happy? Surely not. Your wife will find another suitor, someone far better than you. Your children will have a new father. They'll move on, and they'll move past you with a lifetime full of comfort, and you can pass into the great darkness knowing you left a great light behind. Isn't that all fathers want for their family? What is your life even worth? Gendro closed his eyes, his head shaking as much as it could within Chrono's iron grip. When the voice came next, it was right next to his ear. Come on, barkeeper. A simple exchange. Your life, or what you have left, for a lifetime of their joy. Surely, you don't think you're worth that. Gendro kept shaking, stammering as the metal hand slowly closed tighter around his neck. He could barely breathe now. It'll be like going home, barkeeper. It'll be peaceful. So peaceful. Gendro slumped, leaning into the hand, feeling the pressure. Marmot and Sally and Benny and Gendro Jr. What good had he ever done them as a father? I need your answer, barkeep. No, Gendro said, drawing up all the courage he had in his body to speak. I ain't making no deal with the devil. Krona pulled him close until they were almost nose to nose, and Gendro was forced to decide which eye cut deeper into him, Krona's metal one or his human one. But with all his defiance, Gendro stared right back. And then, the metal hand was torn away, leaving Gendro to fall forward, stumbling to his knees. This rat has one of those irrational sets of reasons for living. Love, loyalty, pride, shame, fear. I wonder what yours is. I wonder if you'll ever know. He took a knee next to Gendro. Not every man would choose as you have. Not every man has. With Gendro on his hands and knees, the stranger returned to the bar, eyeing the velvet bag as Gendro began to sob. Still, over 120 steers seems like an appropriate reward. What is this, 4 years of good nights? All right now? Existence will certainly change for you. Though, I think I'd be disappointed if the money was the only reason that was so. Perk up. You've chosen life. Krona looked down at Gendro with a strange look, like Krona was searching for something that eluded him. Then that one brief look of uncertainty was gone, and Krona placed a single final coin on the bar. A tip. For a truly transcendentally awful meal, some mediocre liquor, and some delicious entertainment. And with that coin gleaming on the bar, Gendro watched the Machine King wipe the remaining vomit deftly from his shirt, don his cloak, and stride to the windows. With a gesture, he released them from their bonds, and the shutters began to groan and shake against their latches again. As the stranger reached the door and stepped into the night, it was like the sound of rain against the roof finally seemed to roar in. Or maybe it had always been there, accompanied by the western breeze through the windows and the echoing sound of thunder. Want to know what happens next? Join us on Patreon to become a hero of Edera and get early access to episodes along with bonus features, director's commentary, and the full Tabta archive. You can also find other ways to support us at the links in the description, and we will see you next week.